This video lesson is a video lesson on how to determine significant and less significant details in an argumentative text, as well as an overview of what the purpose of argumentative texts are. So remember that argumentative texts have two sides. The claim is an author's stance on a topic and shows whether they are for or against the topic. An author uses emotions, logic, feelings, reasons, and facts to convince the reader to believe what they believe. And they use feelings, logic, reasons, emotions, and facts to convince the reader to do something within the text. An argumentative text is an opinion text. Authors use three things to persuade their readers. They use pathos, which is passion or emotions, such as heartwarming stories, personal experiences, humorous jokes, pitiful photographs, etc. It is appealing to your emotions in pathos. Logos, they are appealing to your logic, so they use logical arguments such as statistics, facts, reasonable arguments, logical organization of information, studies, etc. Lastly, ethos or ethics, they use credibility and trust, such as quotes from professionals, customer reviews, celebrity endorsements, and personal qualifications to appeal to your credibility and trust. Now we're going to reread. Putting good deeds in headlines may not be so good. At this point, you're welcome to independently read, or you can use the audio support that I have posted under today's assignment. And the goal of rereading this time is to identify less significant and significant details. And we're also going to determine what the author is using to persuade us. So are they using pathos? Are they using ethos? Are they using logos? So first, we're going to determine what's significant details and what's less significant. You do not have to start on a new clean document. You can use the same document from last week, which was February 2nd and February 3rd. Again, you do not need to start over. You can unsubmit your assignment from last week or find that document in your draft in your Google Drive. So now I'm going to skim through the text. I'm going to look at the intro, the body, and conclusion, and determine at least two significant details and two less significant details. Now, you will not be able to use my examples, but it will help you determine your own two significant details and two less significant details. An online collection has raised more than $145,000 for a man who stumbled onto a pile of money and turned it over to the police. Glenn James' story of a good deed is just one of many making headlines. It may not be exactly brand new, but public interest does seem to be piqued these days by ordinary folks making what are seen as extraordinary ethical decisions. Some, however, question if airing this kind of good news is actually good. So I'm going to say that this is important because it helps us understand the author's claim. I'm going to highlight it in yellow. It's a supporting detail. And add in a comment. It does help me further understand the author's claim. This information is important because it helps us better understand the author's claim. And I believe you have to save them. Yes, click on comment to save them. Okay, I'm gonna continue reading. James's story, he's a homeless man in Boston who turned in a backpack filled with $42,000, went viral. So did another recent story about a Dairy Queen manager from Minnesota who stood up for a blind man who didn't know he'd been robbed. Just a few weeks before that, stories swirled about four college football players who found themselves inside a store that was accidentally left unlocked. So I'm going to say the Dairy Queen manager from Minnesota. This is also important. It gives more details. Make sure this is highlighted in yellow. And then I'm going to add a comment. This gives us supporting details because it gives the reader supporting details. Okay. So I have so far one important and one less significant detail. I'm sorry, I think I have actually two significant. So I'm gonna work on two less significant details. The blind man dropped a $20 bill and a woman picked it up and pocketed it. The manager threw her out of the restaurant and then handed the man $20 from his own pocket. Just a few weeks before that, story swirled about four college football players who found themselves inside a store that was accidentally left unlocked. Instead of just taking what they wanted, they left every penny they owed at the checkout. One television report called it a story of honesty. That's become a shining beacon of righteousness. So this will be important. Since I already have two, I'm going to still highlight it. This is also important because it shows us, further explains the claim, and it gives us, it's appealing to our emotions or pathos. There are lots of people who suffer from more myopia, and so when you see this good happening, it renews some of your faith, says University of Texas professor Mimi Drumright. She says, these are the type of story you would hope inspire copycats. The reports of these good deeds probably are going to beget more good deeds, and that is a good thing. Already countless strangers have been paying it forward with $20 tips to the Dairy Queen worker, and everything from jobs to gift cards for the other do-gooders, not to mention a small fortune for Glenn James. But at the risk of twisting any of these precious good news stories into more bad news, experts say there may be a downside of overplaying it. Of course, we identify this as our counter argument. It's opposite of how the author feels. They did do the right thing, and that's commendable, but heroic, I think not, says Carnegie Mellon ethics professor Peter Madsen. He sees the high praise swirling around the stories as kind of moral grade inflation. They had an obligation to do what they did. It was not above and beyond the call of duty. They really just did what we should have expected them to do, he says. When you celebrate what should be ordinary behavior as extraordinary, experts say it sends a dangerous message. I'm going to highlight this portion. The other portion I believe is important. Whether it sends a dangerous message or not, I don't think is significant. Because we're just talking about good deeds. We're not talking about anything that's dangerous. This is not significant information. It doesn't give us more insight on the claim. It doesn't give us reasons, facts, or logic. It just gives a personal opinion. I do worry about a culture in which people are giving themselves credit for not having done terrible things. It sets a really low bar for what it takes to be a good person, says London Business School professor Daniel Efron. Efron who teaches behavioral ethics, says fetting folks for what he calls the immoral road not taken could actually encourage bad behavior. When guys with integrity get put on a pedestal, he says the implication is that they're exceptional, far greater than the rest of us. So I'm going to say this also does help us understand the claim more. I'm going to keep going because I'm looking for something that's not significant. It suggests that most people in that situation would have done those bad things. So it reinforces the norm that most people are selfish and self-serving, and therefore it's okay if you're selfish and self-serving. However, others, however, suggest the reason these stories are seen as remarkable is not because we diminish ourselves, but because of the way we diminish these particular do-gooders. In this particular case, I'll just say it, the homeless man was an African American guy, and most of the young football players who paid for the goods were African American. So whether their race is not important, we all have a expectation of what is an understanding of what is good and what's wrong. So the fact that they were African American doesn't help us understand it any more or any less. So I'm going to say this information is not significant. And doesn't help us further understand the author's claim. He's just giving us some details about who the people are, but it does not help us understand the claim more. So far I have showed you how to read through a text, how to find what's important or what's significant, and what's less significant or less important based on the author's claim. Hope that you guys take the rest of this time to work independently to determine at least 2 significant details and 2 less significant details, and you're welcome to watch my video lesson as many times as you need to see more insight. You also can take a look at my notes on the right. You can pause at any time if you need to add this to your notes. Claim so far, I believe that she is for putting good deeds in headlines because it may cause others to also do good deeds. Based on paragraph 4 and 5, I believe that this author is for putting good deeds in headlines. This is what we did on last week. Important because it gives the readers supporting details. Let's just say supporting. Let me see if it'll allow me to fix it. So far, I believe the author is using pathos to appeal to the reader's emotions. We do get into more of logos towards the middle and ending. And of course, the topic is putting good deeds. And is putting good deeds in headlines a good idea? Hope this video lesson has helped. And I look forward to seeing you guys in class.